Hello and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays, where each week we look at the Proverbs and try to do some meditating on them, maybe some memorizing of them in order that we might grow in wisdom. So today I want to look at Proverbs chapter 8, verses 12 through 14. And like the last 2 weeks that we've been going through, this is wisdom personified as a woman who is presenting her case. So wisdom is speaking. And here's what those verses say. I, wisdom, live together with good judgment. I know where to discover knowledge and discernment. All who fear the Lord will hate evil. Therefore I hate pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech. Common sense and success belong to me. Insight and strength are mine. So here we have a list of things that seem to be collected around wisdom. It says wisdom lives together with good judgment, and that wisdom knows where to discover knowledge and discernment, and that wisdom basically owns common sense, success, insight, and strength. And those are all things that I would say are universally desirable, clearly beneficial. I really can't imagine anyone arguing that they do not want good judgment, knowledge, discernment, common sense, success, insight, or strength, right? These are things we want. But let's look closer at verse 13, which is the only one of these verses that we will work on memorizing today. It kind of gets to the nugget of a lesson I want to go through. It says, all who fear the Lord will hate evil. Therefore, I hate pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech. So that looks to me like this scripture is defining very specifically some of the elements of evil, and they are listed. Pride, arrogance, corruption, and perverse speech. Now, while clearly not everyone thinks corruption is evil, there are people who find ways to justify it for themselves. We probably can safely say that as a culture today, we generally agree that corruption is evil. That is why it makes the news when corruption is uncovered, right? Because we agree as a whole corruption is evil. Corruption really is only a thing that seems like a good idea to someone who is able to convince themselves that they can get away with it, either because they think no one will ever find out, or they think they have enough power to get away with it. But generally, I think we agree that corruption is evil. What about perverse speech? First of all, I think we should look at definitions here, because I don't know about you, but when I hear the word perverse, my mind goes straight to referencing that it's a sexual thing. But I think that's more of a thing that's right this moment in our culture. It's based on our hang-ups and our obsessions in this culture as it exists today. When you look at the definitions, the dictionary definitions for perverse, it doesn't really go straight to a sexual thing for the most part. So I looked it up in Merriam-Webster, and here are some definitions for perverse. 1, turned away from what is right or good, that is, corrupt. 2, improper or incorrect. 3, contrary to the evidence or direction of a judge in a point of law, which I thought was interesting. 4, obstinate in opposing what is right, reasonable, or accepted, that is wrong-headed. 5, marked by peevishness or petulance. And 6 is then marked by perversion. And if you go over to the definition of perversion, it does have more of a sexual element, at least for the second part of the definition. So for the most part, perverse speech is not a sexual speech reference. It is more a speech that insists that wrong is right. It is a speech that is being just deliberately and unreasonably difficult. It's one of those two, you know. So it makes sense to define that kind of speech as evil because, first of all, you can lead others in the wrong direction with that kind of speech, and secondly, it causes anger and frustration and division among people when you're around someone who is a perverse speaker. So that's evil, right? It drives people apart. But what about those first two evil items in the list, which were pride and arrogance? Do we think those things are evil in general, or do we kind of just think of them as, I don't know, irritating, personality quirks? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the world around us, but to me it looks like as a culture we've relegated pride and arrogance to just, it's a personality quirk, it's a, vaguely irritating, but we don't so much recognize them as evil, it seems to me. If I'm wrong, tell me so. So why would they be evil? I thought about this, and here I think it boils down to this. Both pride and arrogance lead us to treat others as if they don't matter, as if they are less than, as if they are other, as if they exist for the purpose of meeting my needs, as if it's okay to step on others in order to get what I want, as if it's okay to make others feel invisible as long as I get to feel important, as if it's okay to take from others if it benefits me, as if there's nothing that others can teach me, as if there's never an instance where I should be yielding to others. So none of that looks like Jesus, does it? And none of it honors other human beings as being made in the image of God. And none of it draws people together, and none of it lifts people up. So that's at least part of why pride and arrogance would be evil and not just irritating, not just a personality quirk. I feel like that's an important place to really meditate and an important tool for us to help us identify and measure evil when we encounter it. And of course, we're first going to think when we encounter it in others. But I would say to identify and measure evil when we encounter it in ourselves. That's the place we first need to be concerned about, I think. So let's go through verse 13 now 3 quick times to try to start getting into our heads so we can memorize it. It's easier to meditate if it's already in our heads. Ready? Let's go. All who fear the Lord will hate evil. Therefore, I hate pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech. And again, all who fear the Lord will hate evil. Therefore, I hate pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech. And one more time. All who fear the Lord will hate evil. Therefore, I hate pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech. As I was reading through those, I realized the I in that is wisdom. Therefore, wisdom hates pride and arrogance. Wisdom hates corruption and perverse speech. But it's not a bad thing to say that I hate it if I want to be a wise person, right? So we're not even going to go back and reword that. We're just going to leave it as it is. So let's be intentional this week in watching for pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech in ourselves. And in working on repenting of these evil things. Repenting means going in the opposite direction, and for sure we can do that with God's help. But first we have to recognize it. First we have to want to repent. So let's look at that. Meanwhile, have a great week, wise ones, and I will see you next time.